deeper conversation with Cheryl, learn about her work and meet Aaron. So anyway, super grateful to be here. I guess I'll just give like a brief introduction of me and kind of where I'm coming from and my story. And I'm honored to be a guest here on the Mountain territory. Did I say it right? Yeah, beautiful. I am a Anishinaabe. My family comes from Kitigan-Zibi, which is located near Maniwaki, Quebec. However, I did not grow up on the res. I actually grew up in Toronto because my grandfather was the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs in his time. And so he moved from the north to Toronto to play hockey. And I was lucky to grow up kind of a very privileged life because of that. But my grandfather went through a lot of barriers as an Indigenous athlete, and our family really owes his success. To hockey. Mike mentioned earlier how hockey has these crazy healing powers, and hockey from my grandfather provided that safe space for him, and also really helped him to kind of understand his identity. And hockey also helped my family to become proud of where we are and where we come from in quite a significant way. So just to get into that, my grandpa was George Armstrong. He was captain of the league for 11 years, played for 21 seasons, and won 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s. He is the last captain to win the Stanley Cup, and he is a proud Anishinaabe man. He's very proud of where he comes from, was very proud of where he came from. He owes a lot of his success to the woman in his family. So he always told me that the most impactful people in his life were his mother and his Anishinaabe grandmother. And I'm going to tell a really quick story about that. When he was growing up, his grandmother, she was a medicine woman and a healer, and she also had this amazing intuition. She was able to kind of see things, foresee things happening. And so he tells a story as a child. He must have been 7 or 8 years old, and his grandmother had made tea for him and his mother, and after they drank the tea, and she could read the tea leaves in the bottom of the mug after. And so she picked up my grandfather's mug and looked at the tea leaves in the bottom of the mug. And this was, my grandfather was 8, and he said, "What I see here, George, is you are in a big building with a bunch of people and you have a stick in your hands." And like, how cool is that? That, later in life, he really thought about that story, and it meant a lot to him. And he ended up being the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, playing in front of a sold out crowd in Maple Leaf Gardens. And so I thought that was a pretty powerful story. And he was very proud to be Indigenous. And his identity was something that I guess changed for him throughout his life. His mother grew up in a time where it wasn't really popular where they were from to be Native, and my grandfather kind of grew up in that system as well, and then paving his life through hockey made him very proud to be Indigenous. So that's a little background about me, where I come from. So I just want to touch on a couple of things that we've talked about so far this morning, and I'm going to try to pull together some of the themes that we've discussed, because I think some really significant things have been spoken about. And first, I want to say, Donnie, you crushed the Thanksgiving address. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Really good. We kind of moved into our athlete panel, and I really appreciated what Cole was saying about his grandfather, and we heard Isaiah talk about it as well with some of the other speakers, and I thought it was very significant to hear about how generations before us have had significant impact on what we do today, and make us proud of who we are, and really ground us in what we're doing, and ground us in our sport. And I thought it was really, really cool that NAG gives, an opportunity to invest our time in other things that we might have not thought we would be passionate about. And for Cole to say that paddling, he kind of came into that through his grandfather and through you know, his grandfather's journey as a paddler. I thought that was very powerful. And when we have these indigenous sporting systems like NEG that allow us to try these new things, I think it provides spaces for indigenous youth to engage in these cultural events, and also to be able to connect to our ancestors and connect to our family members and connect to our grandparents. And I just thought that was so powerful that he took up paddling. He didn't want to do that to start. I was kind of lucky. I just, I fell into hockey off the bat. But so yeah, I thought that was a really cool story. And then as we moved into our academic panel with Mike Sherrill and Isaiah and Aaron, we kind of see that bridge between academics and sports. And for a lot of us that are in academia now and we're athletes, I think Mike talked about kind of getting into kind of his academic read later on, and so did Isaiah, and kind of the same was for me, that I kind of got into my academic groove a little later in life. But to be able to bridge academics and sports and these experiences, I think is super important. And what a lot of us athletes don't realize, I think, is that a lot of our stories and what we do and our experiences, there's theory embedded in that. And that theory can be hard to find sometimes, but once you pull that out, once you make those connections, it's extremely powerful. So I'll give you a quick example. For me, so I played hockey at Harvard for 4 years. And I kind of, I was lucky enough to get into Harvard because of, my ability to play. But I wasn't so much engaged academically as I would have liked to have been. And it wasn't until my 4th year at Harvard, I took a course with Professor Philip Deloria. I don't know if anyone knows who that is. Does anyone recognize? Okay. So I didn't recognize really who he was at the time, and I took an Indigenous course with him. It was my first Indigenous course that I've ever taken, and I wasn't very confident in my academic ability in college. But he really believed in me and really got me going, and that was kind of what spearheaded my journey into academics. And so I took this course with him. I wrote a paper on residential school, and it was like the best grade that I got in college. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do this. Anyways, from there, after I graduated, I ended up taking my master's at Western, and I decided to write my master's on the story of my grandfather. And maybe some of our youth at the table here, and I know Isaiah, you're kind of tinkering back and forth with whether or not you should get into it. But for me, I remember at first, my supervisor was like, "This is a great story to tell, and it can be told, it can be told in an academic way." And I remember for my grandfather and I, we were challenged because we were like, I love the story, and my grandfather loves the story, and my family loves the story, but we're like, who else would be interested in this? Like, would anyone else find this interesting? And we kind of pushed through that, and I sat with my grandfather for hours in his basement and just listened to him tell stories of his life. And I'm very grateful for that time spent with him. And what we produced together was a master's thesis, and I guess it turned out okay because I passed. So, one of my grandfather's stories was that he was born to obviously a native mom and a non-native father, and because of that, he didn't have to go to residential school. His cousins unfortunately had to bear going to Spanish residential school, which was very challenging for them. And in the summers, his cousins would stay at his house and would tell him some of the horrors that were happening. And my grandfather was really lucky that he kind of didn't have to go through that experience, and I really think it helped him throughout his life. And obviously, he paved the path to the NHL. His cousins, unfortunately, had a very different path, and that was because of their experiences at the school. And I think later in life, it took a while for him to talk about it and to kind of really unpack that. But we talked about these things, and I put it into a thesis. And what was really interesting for me was I had no idea that this story could be something academic, and it did. It became something academic, and the theories embedded within my grandfather's words once I started to kind of reflect on those and pull out little pieces of them and relate it to other literature, I was like, man, this guy is so smart. And so that was a great process for me, and I really think it changed me as a person, and I'm so grateful for him for sharing those stories with me and allowing me to put it into paper, because he's very hesitant to let his private life out in the public. But that was a great opportunity for me. So if any of you guys are thinking about pursuing or continuing to pursue academics, or if that is, something that you're thinking about, don't be afraid to, tell stories that are important to you, because you never know how important they can be to someone else. Yeah.
Now what?
I don't know how much time I have left. I always get emotional when I talk, guys. So, little story, my face, by the way, this isn't a bug bite. I fell off my bike. So a lady last night was like, oh, did something bite your face? If I'm drooling, that's because I broke this entire side of my face. Fell off my bike, it's healing. But it's getting better. So, okay, so I guess I'll kind of pull this together. So we've talked about a lot of amazing themes. Cheryl mentioned connection, building relationships, and Harlan talked about it this morning, is that events like this give us an opportunity to connect with each other, to learn from each other, to learn about other cultures, to learn about the land we're on. And I'm really grateful to be here. And so I think just making sure that we all take the opportunity to get to know each other, to learn from each other, to develop those reciprocal relationships, it's super important. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to watch all the athletes participate. I'm grateful to be here amongst some great minds, and these events like this always fuel me culturally, and I'm very appreciative to be here and be amongst you all. And so thank you so much for having me, and let's just enjoy the rest of the day. I'm really excited to hear from the rest of the speakers, and big wish.
Absolutely. I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Your experiences down in Harvard, down in the States.
Yeah.
My daughter went down on a soccer scholarship to Tennessee, and that first year was a tough one. And so just wondered if there's a few highlights or lowlights that you could share. But at the end of those 4 years, she was the captain of the team. And she was trying to convince me, and I was trying to convince her to stay and do her master's, because she was meeting people from all over the world. And I just wondered how you dealt with that, being there by yourself, making new friends. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, no, it was like, very similar to, what our athletes spoke about earlier, Aaron and Isaiah, it's definitely, it was hard leaving home for sure. It was hard getting in that car and driving to Boston. I remember wanting to turn around. And my dad was like, there's no way that this car is turning around.
Huh.
And, it took me until Thanksgiving to kind of adjust. And once I got past that, there were moments where I was like, I want to go home, you get homesick. But kind of once you get over that, and then you start to form, close relationships with your teammates and your friends, a far more comfortable space. And I personally was lucky because I had another Indigenous athlete on my team, and so that was helpful for me. And there's obviously obstacles that happen, and for me, I was lucky that I had a really strong foundation of teammates. Like I was really lucky, and I know not everyone has that, but I was lucky to have that. And so that really helped my time. And I mean, as like for me, Harvard was an amazing positive experience. I really enjoyed my time there, and I'm grateful for my teammates for making that much easier for me. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Absolutely, and I can see the passion
that
that came out of it. Made you who you
maybe
are.
on this side of my face you can this side doesn't do. Yes.
I just want to share with you that I'm old enough. I remember quite vividly, number 10, George Armstrong, captain of the Leafs. And Tony Bauer was really close to my favorites.
Yeah.
And he was amazing. And I felt so inspired as a kid.
Yeah.
awesome. And it wasn't until just a couple years ago, I even learned that he was a chief.
Yeah. Did you know he was called the chief? He was nickname?
Well, yes, I did,
Yeah.
but I never
Never made the
connected.
connection,
Never
yeah.
connected. I thought it was the chief because he was the captain.
Yeah, no, my grandfather, he was given the nickname the chief. Actually, the name was given to him by the Stoney Indian tribe when he was out playing in Alberta for the Allen Cup. And he went, and the Stoney tribe had heard that there was an Indigenous player on the team, and so they invited him out, and they gave my grandfather a ceremony with a headdress. So actually, the chief was given to him in ceremony. And then after that, it caught on and obviously became popularized within his own team, within the NHL and within Toronto. But the original story from that is it was given to him in ceremony, which is quite interesting. But yeah. Thank you. I like him too. So I also like him.
I loved it.
Yeah. I like him.
Can you just speak to some of the work you're doing now with the rinks with girls, Indigenous girls, and even the hockey moms? Like, I just think it's really interesting, really cool work that you're doing with Armstrong. So it'd be really cool, I think, for them.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, so I'm wearing this medallion that was gifted to me by one of my players' moms. So this is my logo, Armstrong Hockey, and I kind of started it, I guess, in honor of my grandfather because he grew up, in a very humble home. He didn't have much, and I always think like if my grandfather grew up in today's age, in the north, in a tent, with ketchup sandwiches, would he have made it up to the NHL? And you think about these things because you look at the structure of hockey now, and obviously, it has a very capitalistic structure, and it's some athletes that might not have the same financial advantages as others. You worry about those athletes slipping through the cracks, and so for me and for you as well, Ryan, and for other people in this room that are very passionate about youth sports and youth opportunity. I just decided to start a hockey school. I currently live in London, Ontario. We're surrounded by many First Nation communities. We have an Oneida, Chippewa, Muncie, Delaware, Caribbean town, Walpole's kind of close. And so I started to run Indigenous hockey camps in London. And we try to make the camps as affordable as possible. We bring out, great mentors. Kelly Babstock, who is a professional women's hockey player from Chemicon. She's a great friend of mine. She was out last week. So we try to, bring great mentors and coaches and, give the kids an opportunity to play and participate. And, if some of them need equipment, we hook them up with equipment and, just to have a week full of culture and sport. And I think, mixing that together is super important because I think it's very related. And so that's kind of what we do with Armstrong Hockey and Hockey Moms, which I started like a Hockey Moms session in London, and so it's all the hockey moms, all the girls that I've coached. We all come out and we play, and they love it, and we laugh. Actually, the Hockey Moms is like the perfect. Like I've coached a lot of different age groups, but the Hockey Moms are like my favorite to coach because they have the perfect mix of like really having this drive and thirst to learn, but also ability to laugh at themselves and not be too hard on themselves. And it's really cool to be a part of. So that's my Hockey Mom session too. So if anyone knows any Hockey Moms in London that want to learn how to play, let me know. But yeah. Research. Yeah, I'm currently in my PhD right now at Western. And just to briefly give Mike a little more, just to make your head a little bigger, than I already have. But Mike spoke with me about a residential school survivor he had heard from that played hockey. She played on a hockey team in a residential school in Spanish, Ontario, and he kind of lit this fire in me to learn more about that. And so my research is on Indigenous women's hockey. And I want to look at kind of, how it has, progressed and changed, intergenerationally. And so I was able to go and visit Marion and talk to her about her story playing hockey in residential school, which I did not know existed, that girls play hockey in residential school. Just looking at the generational, I guess, transformation of hockey, within Indigenous females. And so interviewing, women that played hockey, growing up or later in life, and then also interviewing, current players and hearing kind of about their experiences. So that's kind of where I'm at, with that, but I owe that to Mike for kind of getting that going for me. So, thank you. Gerald McKinley, yeah, so he's in the School of Public Health at Western, and he was my master's in graduate too, and he's been great.
Victoria Parish.
No. Janice is has helped me out quite a bit with that. But yeah, Parish she's great.
This residential women's hockey is fascinating. I'm learning this.
Yeah.
And I can already see it.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more about what you learned so far about the women's experiences through your, I assume, one subject so far, but just in general?
Yeah, so it's one subject so far, and I've been really trying to find other survivors that have played. It's been incredibly difficult. And for this elder, Elder McGregor, she went to school in Spanish, which was where my, some of my family members went, and she originally joined the hockey team. So a coach from Saskatchewan, he was an Indigenous fellow, and he came to teach at the school. He was like, I want to get a girls hockey team started. And so she joined the team because she wanted to skip confession. So girls hockey practice was at the exact same time as confession. And so she was like, I've never played hockey. I don't really know much about it, but I don't want to go to confession. So I'm going to go to hockey practice. And so they built a team out of that. And she spoke a lot about her experiences, and they would go and they would play non-Indigenous teams in the Sudbury region. And she told me that they were met with grace at every game they were at, that they were met with grace. And the only time that she ever kind of encountered a situation was on the ice. And it was kind of just she talks about how one girl was kind of like, giving it to her on the ice, and she gave it back. And so that was a funny story. And the girls used to drive to practice in a hearse, which was hilarious. They load all their equipment in the hearse and drive to the games. And so no, her story was extremely compelling. And for her, we hear a lot about residential school survivors, male residential school survivors who play hockey, that residential school was a saving grace for them. And obviously, we've seen, through that, that survivors have made their own meanings out of the sports that were, on their own terms. And when residential school intended to have sports for obviously another intention, for assimilation, but Marion did the same thing. She made her own meanings out of hockey, and hockey helped her to survive.
Back to you, Jim.
Any final questions for Kaylee, or is there any one particular story your grandfather told you that really resonated with you or made you laugh? Like maybe that could be one way to put it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I was lucky to hear a bunch of stories. But I'll give oh man, there's so many. Yeah, I know. I'll give a good Johnny Bauer story, since we have Johnny Bauer family here. So Johnny Bauer was the goaltender for the Leafs. And him and my grandfather were best friends, and they were roommates. And so they obviously knew each other very well. And my grandfather was kind of more of a, like a shit disturber on the team. And Johnny had a heart of gold, like just the most genuine, beautiful human being, just heart of gold. And Johnny and my grandpa went on a fishing trip, and they were up in the north, they were fishing, and all day with their lines in the water, they weren't catching a fish, weren't catching a fish, weren't catching a fish, weren't catching a fish. And then finally Johnny feels a bite on his line and pulls it up, and he has like this huge, like he has a huge pike, like huge fish. And so my grandpa's, and so Johnny's going nuts, he's super happy he's caught this, and my grandpa goes, oh, let me see that, like, you know, and then Johnny's like, oh, you know, he wanted to take it, he's like, we gotta take this fish. And he was super excited. So my grandpa like takes the fish off of him and goes, whoop, and whips it back in the water. And Johnny was just like devastated, like absolutely devastated, because they spent all day trying to catch this fish, and my grandpa grabbed it and whipped it back in the water. And so that was one of his, you know, Johnny had a heart of gold, and was probably mad at him for a good 10 seconds, and then they were best friends again. But yeah, that's one of my most peasy stories.
Well, I'm sure they can read your master's thesis. To learn more, but thank you, Kaylee. You're an incredible and wonderful person. Super grateful to know you and know all of the work that you're doing. We have a few gifts to present to you to say thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of Standing Mayor next to you. Very grateful that you're joining us for the rest of the weekend. So thank you so much. So it is 12:40. We are